But on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, he is from The Athletic. He covers the Colts. He is Stephen Holder with us. I get peppered with Deon Cain questions often. What is the latest? Because last check, everybody's pretty happy with his progress. What's the latest, and what do you expect from him once he returns from that injury and gets a chance to play?
So I saw Deon on Saturday. He was in the building, so he's not taking a lot of days off, so that's good. And, look, he's at the, I don't want to say the tail end of his rehab, but he's well into the rehab. And remember, this injury happened in August. So by the time they get to training camp, he's going to be a year out. So I got to think by then, look, not all ACLs are created the same. So no two people recover on the exact same timetable. And I always impress that upon people. Always remember that. However, that being said, if history is an indicator, when you're a year out and you're a young guy like he is and the rehab's going well, he should be able to participate. So that's the goal. The goal is to get him back for training camp, and they feel pretty good about that right now. And, look, there's two questions with Deon. When does he get back? And then the second question is the one we can't answer, which is what's he going to look like? And we just don't know. Look, I mean, it takes time coming off those ACL injuries now, okay, because I think Malik Hooker is a great example. Malik Hooker really didn't flash, I felt like, for the first half of last season. And I thought he really got his legs under him. And if you talk to coaches, they felt maybe by midseason he started to look like himself. It took a while. So Deon's got time on his side, so that's good. But, look, I think we should have measured expectations for him coming out of the gate.
Stephen Holder of The Athletic, he joins us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Speaking of measured expectations, frankly, here in May, there's not a lot of them. As far as this season is concerned for the Colts, it's a level of excitement, and I do get it, but you do have to slow things down just a little bit, don't you?
I mean, what are you trying to do? You trying to hurt business? I
don't mean to.
I want to keep the train going.
I don't mean to. I said this a little. Yeah, listen, you're right. Go ahead.
No. I'm joking. Listen, let's be honest. Listen, nobody should be crowning anybody right now. Okay, let's just be clear. All right. Now, that is the preface to what I'm about to say. What I would add is that this team has an opportunity. They can play with anybody. There's no question about that. And I think last year, the problem with the Colts, or one of their problems, was depth. They didn't have a lot of it. And I think if you think about what's happened this offseason, whether we're talking about Devin Funchess or this draft, I think the emphasis in this offseason was about creating depth. So now, think about this. You had a linebacker situation last year where, okay, why did they draft all these linebackers, right? Because I was scratching my head initially too. But I think, look at these linebackers. Last year at the end of the preseason, they had Darius Leonard, Anthony Walker, and a bunch of who's that guy. Okay? I'm just telling you, it was outside of the two guys who are the core guys, that position was the weakest position on the team. And I'm talking about including wide receiver. All right? That's how I think big the drop-off was from their two primary guys to the remaining guys in that room. Well, let's talk about what they've got now. And then granted, we haven't seen Bobby Okereke and some of these guys play yet, but certainly these are highly drafted guys, all right? Second and third round picks in the case of Ben Banogu and Bobby Okereke. So, I mean, unless these guys are bust, they're going to really fuel the competition in that room. So think about that now. Extrapolate that into the secondary, where now they've drafted two corners, a safety. And let me tell you, I think Kari Willis is a guy who people are going to, I think, is going to open some eyes. Maybe he makes this thing interesting in the preseason. Marvell Tell is one of the guys who coaches really had a lot to say about. I talked to some people behind the scenes coming out of rookie camp, and he was a name that came up. So just think about how they've upgraded the competition and the depth. You had a lot of injuries at the early part of last season, and what happened? The Colts went 1-5. And the injuries were a big reason why. They've upgraded their depth, and that is how you withstand injuries, and the best teams are the teams that can weather those storms.
Stephen Holder of The Athletic joins us. All right, here's another big one. Here's another May thought, and I'm sure you probably received this question via Twitter, email, or what have you, but if the Colts have a huge season in which they upgrade, let's say, they get to the AFC title game, let's just say for the heck of the argument here, we would have to suggest that Andrew Luck is probably going to play at a level in which he would be MVP conversation worthy. Is that what we'd be thinking about in your belief?
Well, look, I thought last year what he did last season was great. It was phenomenal. And let's put that in perspective, though. He did that coming off of an offseason where he didn't throw a football, right? And when we went out there for the first day of training camp, the question was, all right, is Andrew Luck ready for this? And then the guy goes out there and he flings the ball around like he hadn't missed a day, right? So now he's going to have an entire offseason. He's going to have a whole season of work in the offense, orchestrating it, learning it, and now he's going to really be an expert in that offense. Last year he was not, and Frank Reich has said that Andrew Luck in many cases deferred to Frank Reich. Now what Frank wants from Andrew is for Andrew to take the next step, which is to say, all right, here's what we're doing. Let's do this, or pull rank sometimes. He's okay with that, right? So when your quarterback becomes an expert in the offense, he can do that. And a guy of Andrew Luck's stature, they're comfortable with him making those kinds of statements. So I think you're going to see a progression with Andrew Luck this year. If he takes a step forward, I don't know what the next step after last year is. The next step, as you said, is probably MVP level performance. But what I'm telling you, I don't think it's just because, he had a good year last year. I think really last year was much more of a challenge than I think we realized, because he's coming off the injury, no practice in the offseason, and a brand new offense. He has none of those issues this season.
It is amazing, too, because you go back and you think about in September, that Philadelphia game, for example, where Brissett came in to heave that Hail Mary at the end, and
right.
Everybody lost their mind. You imagine where we sit right now, Stephen, compared to where we were this time last year. Talk about a 180.
Yeah, and I think really just I noticed something about Andrew Luck, too. Just it's not even physical. It's just his demeanor, right? And I think last year, I thought in the spring, he was in a pretty good place, but I think he still had this huge weight on his shoulders in terms of, the expectations and just the waiting and the long layoff and the questions. And I really think that took a toll on him. Look, I know he puts on a good face, and he's a different guy, right? He doesn't read a lot of coverage. He's not on social media and all that. So I think he kind of is able to stay away from a lot of this. But there's no question. He knew it was there. And now that has been removed, I think you see a different Andrew Luck. And I'm going to tell you something. Look, he knows that it's been a while since they've won anything meaningful around here. He knows it, and Andrew Luck wants it. I'm going to tell you something. He definitely is a guy who is compartmentalized and doesn't get too sort of bogged down into being a football player only. We know about his many layers and all that, but don't ever mistake Andrew Luck for a guy who doesn't want to win and win it all. This guy, I'm telling you, he would run through a brick wall to win a Super Bowl, and I think he's prepared to do it.
Stephen Holder of The Athletic, he's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You thought about how they're going to utilize, as long as it continues to go in this direction and he's on the roster, which we assume he will be, Spencer Ware, the veteran, with other guys? Because I do like the balance they have in their backfield, and I thought it was necessary to get somebody, even though I like Marlon Mack, because more than likely he's going to miss a game or two at some point of the season.
And I think that's what drove this, really was insurance, if you will. And again, he's got to make the team, as you said, and Spencer Ware's got his own health issues or questions, I guess, right? So we'll see how he fares. But I think really it was about depth, frankly. Look, they really like Marlon Mack, and I think they are invested in Marlon Mack. And the Colts would tell you that Marlon Mack, if not for and missing a couple games last year, he's probably a 1,000-yard rusher. They're right about that. I would also say that Marlon Mack showed, I thought, huge gains in his game last year. And I think as much as anybody on the roster, Marlon Mack was a guy who made as big a jump last year as anybody from 2017 to 2018. So I think he should be credited for that. Really, the only question for Marlon Mack is staying healthy. I mean, he's got the good thing for Marlon is he's not had major injuries. He's had these nagging hamstrings, calves, etc., and he's got to be able to weather those or really prevent them more than anything is what he's got to do. So, and look, I mean, guys who are skill position players, who are speed guys, that tends to happen. And I just don't know that there's an answer to it. But maybe that's just something you're going to have to live with Marlon Mack. But I think, again, that's why Spencer Ware is here. I don't think he threatens Marlon Mack's role in any fashion. I think the guy who maybe gets impacted here is Jordan Wilkins. I think Nyheim Hines is going to be impacted this year as well. But frankly, the guy who's going to hurt him, in my estimation, is Parris Campbell, because there's a lot of, I think, intersection between their two skill sets.
What did Parris Campbell? I know that you were reporting from the rookie workouts this past weekend. What did Parris Campbell look like? We talked to Rock Ya-Sin on Friday, I believe it was, too. I don't know what you can take away from these, but I guess from what I understood, it was mostly positive.
Oh, no question. Look, I don't want to put too much stock in what Parris Campbell did, but I would tell you, people in the building, I got some feedback. I mean, I was there and I saw it, but I want to hear it from the experts. And I'm just telling you, they're in love, man. They love them some Parris Campbell. And look, I don't know if 3 practices, I don't know what you can glean from 3 practices necessarily as it relates to the regular season, because there's not really a lot of carryover from what they did this weekend to what they're going to do in September, right? But the one thing that was very important this past weekend was to look at the skill sets. And one of the things they saw from Parris Campbell was that, okay, this guy can run all the routes. This guy's not just a slot receiver. They can do a lot more with him. And I think that right there is what has them excited, because Ohio State, the feedback I'm getting is that Ohio State, I'm not going to criticize what they did, but it is a little bit of a head scratcher to the Colts as to why Ohio State used him the way they did and didn't use him in a broader fashion. There's a lot of people at Colts headquarters that are a little mystified about that. So that's a good thing, because those questions existed, but he's answering those questions. So let me tell you, they are thrilled with Parris Campbell. Rock Ya-Sin, I'll just add, the one thing you see with him is he is a competitor. He gets in your face. He is willing to compete, and that is what you want. You want a guy who's not scared, and he's going to go up and tackle you as well. That's the thing they saw about him on tape. Certainly they weren't tackling this weekend, but that has been something that he has demonstrated as a college player, and they're really excited because you have to tackle as a defensive back in this Colts defense.
Are there any comparison names out there? Because I haven't heard any as far as Parris Campbell is concerned. Have you?
Not really. That's a good point. I really haven't. I don't know. But one thing I would say, though, is I would say this. I just talked about him being more than just a slot receiver. And I will admit to not being an expert on Parris Campbell, if you can believe that, before this draft. But here's what I would tell you. Because he was sort of characterized as a slot guy, speed guy, I kind of envisioned a guy who was going to walk in and kind of be small and maybe not very impressive physically. And then I met him. And I was wrong, okay? Parris Campbell's a big guy. They listed him at, I think, 208, and I thought he was at least 208 pounds. Now, I mean, this guy has a muscular build, and he's not short. He's 6 feet tall, a full 6 feet. So this guy is not T.Y. Hilton physically, not at all. He's on the other end of the spectrum, I think, from T.Y. Hilton. And that was what struck me. I was like, whoa, wait, you're Parris Campbell? So I was actually very thrilled to see that, because I think with him, now you can start to understand when you see his physical attributes. Now you can understand, okay, I see why they give him the ball in the open field and let him run through people, because he can do that. I mean, that's not necessarily his job description, but if he has to, he can put his head down and he can power through people. So, I mean, at 208 pounds, he's not going to be an easy guy for small DBs to bring down.
You know, the Chuck Strong gala is on Thursday, and they continue that even after Chuck is now gone and is the defensive coordinator in Chicago. It is interesting because you don't normally see that, not just around the NFL, but in teams in general. I think it's pretty cool they continue that, even though Chuck for a couple of years has been gone.
Yeah, and I think the credit for that is it goes to Jim Irsay. I mean, it's really that cause, I think, really became personal for Jim, obviously, you know, going through that situation with Chuck in 2012. And look, they may not have, their relationship may not have, or I guess their business relationship may not have ended on good terms. Obviously, he fired the guy, right? But I do think that when you talk to Chuck, he doesn't have a lot of ill will toward this organization. Now, he may have ill will to one particular guy, and we'll leave that alone for another day. But
so he won't be at the gala on Thursday. Is what you're saying?
He's invited.
Yeah,
I don't think he's invited. But he doesn't have ill will toward the organization. And I don't know if you've talked to Chuck. I mean, I've talked to Chuck since he's departed, and I've never gotten the sense that he has any ill will toward the organization. It just didn't work out, you know. And so I think Chuck, both parties are, I think, really mature about this. Chuck and Jim Irsay, and that's why they can make this work. You're right. It is a really unique situation for a guy to be working for another organization and still to carry on this tradition here. So I give them a lot of credit. It's a great cause. They've raised millions of dollars. And, yeah, man, you know, kick the hell out of cancer. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, too. And it was like it was such a great rise. And, you know, they go to the AFC title game, and it was on schedule. And then even before, and I guess you can kind of equate this to Luck taking way too many hits, but that's, you know, then it kind of fell apart. So you go from 0 to 60 and back down to 0 again. That's tough. I mean, that'd be tough to deal with as a coach.
Yeah, I would agree. Look, here's what I'd say. Look, Chuck had a hand in it too, and that's part of the problem. I mean, so he's got to sort of bear some of the burden for that. But you're right. I mean, you wish it could have worked out, you know, because you know you had a great ride. You had a team that looked like it was destined to do something, but in the end, they just didn't have enough, and they didn't do enough as coaches, as leadership of the organization to keep that thing going, and protecting that quarterback was part of that duty, and they didn't get it done. So that's why we are where we are, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to put it. That's where we are. It's amazing though to see the national input of where they have raised the bar, and it's also a little bit tough. And I'm not trying to squash anybody's great feelings about it, because it's been a long time since they've had this early great feelings before the start of a season. But at the same time, if you're at that Arrowhead game in January, you still understand how far it felt they were away. But you feel good about these additions, no question.
Yeah, and look, I think, again, last year, as I said, I really feel like it was supposed to be a transition year anyway. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. Obviously, it mattered, and that loss hurt. However, they were ahead of schedule, and I think really it's the second year when you start to really feel comfortable in the schemes and the systems. The coaches understand each other. Take, for example, even just the understanding going into the draft between the scouts and the coaches understanding each other and talking the same language. That wasn't really the case last year. Now, they still had a hell of a draft, so if they do better than that, then I don't know what to tell you. But my point is, that was a challenge last year in spite of the success they had. So every little thing gets easier over time, you know, when you've got your program going, you know, and you've got your everyone's on the same page, I guess is what I'm getting at. So your systems, offense, defense. I mean, you think this defense, you think these players, these young players, you think they're going to be better in year one or year two in the system? I mean, it's obvious, right? They should be better this year, at least better equipped to perform well. They've got to do it, but in terms of the scheme and understanding and experience, they're going to be better positioned this year. So I like their chances. They've got more going for them this year than they did last year.
Are you going over there to cover that event Thursday?
I just got the email today. I think I may have to go over there. Yeah, I always like catching up with Chuck, so why not?
Well, stop by because I'm going to be doing the show out there too. I talked to him back in October, I think, and he doesn't like to do, and I wouldn't either. I mean, I don't blame him. He doesn't like to discuss or get into too much detail, right. And really, the only stories that people haven't heard besides you and I around here are the ones where he has to go into full detail and just doesn't want to, and I don't blame him. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, I saw him at Reggie's get-together when Reggie went in the Ring of Honor, and Chuck came back in town for that. Now, he didn't come to the game on Sunday because that would have been awkward, but
yeah.
but he made sure to show up at the dinner that weekend to honor Reggie. I mean, they're close and have been for a long time. And look, as I said, he was embraced by everybody at that event, and that was all Colts people. So. I'm actually not surprised they're still keeping Chuck Strong going. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep, no doubt. Hey, always a pleasure. We'll see you out there. Just stop by and we'll have a conversation on Thursday when you're out there.
All right, my man. Sounds good.
Gotcha. Stephen Holder of The Athletic is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. That is always good.